Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we didn't have a lot of anime-based video games, let alone anime shows, to choose from in the US market. It made series such as Dragon Ball an easy success, as it didn't really have much else to compete with at the time. The catch, of course, was being able to wake up early enough in the morning to watch it, and be able to hold out while new episodes were in the works. This made a lot of people, myself included, desperate for anything we could get our hands on. Even if it was an arguably terrible product, we didn't really care, so much as it came out here. In 1997, Dragon Ball GT Final Bout, simply known as Dragon Ball Final Bout in Japan, had a limited release in the US with only 10,000 copies being made due to the, at the time, niche market of the series. Years passed, and we started to not only get Dragon Ball games out here in the West, but arguably good ones at that. Dragon Ball Z Budokai on the PS2 and GameCube, for example, was a huge step forward in securing more interest for Dragon Ball products, as well as showing that a good 3D fighter under this license was actually possible. Even more years passed, and suddenly, almost out of nowhere, Atari decided to re-release Dragon Ball GT Final Bout in the US for the PlayStation 1 in 2004, this time making it a mass release. But the timing couldn't have been stranger, as Budokai 2 had already hit the market for current-gen systems at the time. Surely there had to be a reason. Surely this title had to be considered worthwhile for such a re-release to be made. Well, if you couldn't already tell, it was panned on release, getting all kinds of negative reviews from gaming outlets and even the general gaming audience. Was this title truly as bad as they said? Strap in, and let's take a look. Dragon Ball GT Final Bout is an interesting title to talk about with regards to the history of Dragon Ball games. For one thing, it was the first Dragon Ball game to get an official US release, limited as it was, but it was also the first Dragon Ball game to make that grand leap into full-on 3D graphics. This made fans understandably excited, as we would be seeing the characters we knew and loved hitting the big time on modern hardware. What could go wrong? We don't know the exact reason that the game received a re-release in the US, but if I was willing to bet, I'd say it had to do with Dragon Ball GT itself just having begun to air the previous year, and Atari wanting to profit off of that. Being that it was originally made long after the series had ended in Japan, the game contained quite a bit of major spoilers for the show, though I don't think fans cared very much, as most were just happy to see it come out here in the first place. So what was this one all about? Well, the idea was to create a 3D fighter on a 2D plane with popular characters from both Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball GT in order to cater to fans of both. The fight engine itself was more like a tweaked version of the one used in the previous Dragon Ball Z Butoden games for the Famicom and Super Famicom. You have your punches, kicks, Kai blasts, dashes, blocks, Kai recharging, and of course, combinations to bring it all together. The characters also have the ability to fly anywhere in the stage and perform special attacks called special knockout tricks. Although these attacks are very powerful, they can easily be deflected or fired back at the opponent, depending on how much Kai they have built up. There are other little tricks added on, such as the Meteor Smash, which was carried over from the Sega Saturn game Dragon Ball Legends. This allows you or an opponent to get a long chain of melee combos going, sometimes up to 5 different times in a row. The game's got multiple modes of play: battle mode with versus com or versus man, which is basically an arcade mode or a 2-player mode, tournament mode, and build-up mode, an idea carried over from the other Dragon Ball game on PS1, Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22, for leveling up your characters. There's also a training mode for practicing your combos. In order to unlock all of the game's characters with one sole exception, you have to play through the 1-player battle mode and defeat them. So let's start with the good. For its time, the game's visuals were decent. The 3D models are a bit stiff-looking overall, but they are still far from bad, at least in my opinion. The game did a good enough job of conveying the look and feel of the Dragon Ball universe, even if most of us would agree it could have been better. I also liked the look and visual flair of the special knockout trick attacks and return attacks, as they added more of a cinematic feel to the game. The build-up mode was also one of my favorite aspects, as it gave the game a much-needed bit of replay value, allowing you to level up your character and even increase their stats while decreasing others, based on the moves you used. The intro sequence was also pretty cool. Unfortunately, I think that's about all the good I can come up with. Oh boy, it's gonna be a long one. First, let's address the elephant in the room. This game's controls are abysmal. Whether you're a fighting game veteran or someone who's jumped into a few casual Street Fighter matches in your life, you're bound to find this setup to be horrid. For starters, you have a very serious input delay with every button press, making the game's learning curve a lot steeper than it should ever have to be. This in turn affects your ability to pull off strings of combos. Even if you take the time to practice all of the movesets, it's usually a gamble on whether or not it will work. On top of that, there's almost no point in even pulling off special attacks. Why? Because you can easily do just as much, if not more damage, by simply cheesing your way through each fight with a punch and kick combination. I was shocked to see those small strings of punches and kicks do just as much, if not more damage to my opponents than all the trouble I went through trying to get a special move in. And that leads me to the next issue. Performing special attacks, while they generally look cool, is an ultimately pointless endeavor. Every time you attempt to use one, your opponent can choose to block it for less damage, hit it away using extra Kai, or even attempt to reflect it back at you, canceling the whole thing out. Unless your opponent has literally no Kai left, they will always perform some type of defense against this attack, robbing you of the ability for it to ever simply land successfully. And again, it's not even that powerful. Your range is surprisingly bad too, with kicks and punches having such a small window for attack, you practically have to look up the nose of the other player in order to reach them. And good luck keeping your enemy in place long enough to even perform the attacks. There's also the voice acting. I was willing to look past the fact that these are obviously not the Funimation voice actors we've come to know over the years, and that's fine, but many of these just sound off.
Alright, I'm going to destroy you, Kakarot.
It seems like this is gonna take some time.
Yikes. I think Stephen Blum voiced Goku here, so at least we have that, I guess. It was also strange how they kept all of the in-game dialogue completely in Japanese while only doing voice work for the in-between battle sequences. The game also has an unforgivable amount of load times. While it is common to see them during the start of a match in fighting games, it is not as common to see them over just about every other menu and event sequence. This quickly starts to wear on your patience, especially in tournament mode. Next, we need to talk about this roster. Dear Lord, who came up with this? If you were to remove every single variation of Goku in this game, you would have close to half of the characters in it. And you thought all the Saiyans in Dragon Ball FighterZ were over the top. Once you reach the end of battle mode, you'll fight Superbaby, a name I will never be able to take seriously no matter what you do to me. The fight with Superbaby is an extremely annoying one, as you can only attack his head and upper body despite the game putting you in line with his legs. Moving up to hit him will cause you to get in the way of all of his major attacks. This isn't to say he can't be defeated, as I was obviously able to do so here, but this fight, which could have been something truly special, ended up being another exercise in frustration instead that you'd likely end up cheesing your way through yet again. The only character you don't unlock just by playing the battle mode is the Super Saiyan 4 version of Goku, a staple in the GT anime itself. In order to unlock him, you have to either beat the game on hard mode without using any continues, or input a cheat code at the start screen. Oh, and speaking of, you'll probably end up using cheat codes to get those characters at some point. Why? Well, because they don't save to memory, of course. No, in this game you have to re-unlock all of the game's characters every time you restart the bloody thing. There is a memory card save for your character data in build-up mode, but other than that, keeping your roster will never be an option. Now you might say to me, Justin, you're being too harsh. 3D models in fighting games were still being perfected, and this was just an early adopter. I could understand where you're coming from, but see, there's this game series called Tobal, which ironically also has character designs by Akira Toriyama. Both its first and second entries came out before Final Bout's original release date in Japan, and yet, it proved to be more fluid and functional in just about every way imaginable. And that was all on top of having the amazing quest mode. Oh, and did I mention that the first Tekken came out even before all of those? Yeah, I think you get what I'm trying to say here. So no, I'm afraid I can't give this one a pass, when other games were already doing this, and doing it much better in fact. It's a shame, because the game modes and other features are actually very nice and could have worked well if the gameplay was just a little more functional. As it is, it's very hard to recommend this to anyone but the most die-hard of Dragon Ball fans and collectors, as the 90s anime drought has long since passed us. The days of having to buy Chinese VHS bootlegs with faulty English subtitles are gone, for anyone old enough to remember that, and we no longer need to eat up every little thing thrown at us in order to support the industry. There are simply better fighters out there. Even Dragon Ball has had plenty of other great titles since then, as well as some in the past, like Hyperdimension, which will always be a personal favorite. Check out games like that, and you're sure to have a much better experience than this unfortunate mess of a battle system. Great things did come of it, but on its own, it's just not worth it outside of its historical significance. And that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts on this game and other Dragon Ball games in the comments below. Until next time, my friends.